Now you see, the Cristiano Ronaldo signing was the beginning of a financial chaos heading Juventus' direction. In 2018, Cristiano Ronaldo signed for Juventus for 117 million, a transfer that shocked the entire world. Cristiano Ronaldo, best player in the world, signing for Juventus. What a statement signing. But as wild as this may sound, that signing played a massive part in an Italian icon leaving Juventus in Giuseppe Marotta. Marotta didn't agree with the finances behind the deal and he felt like his time had come to an end at Juventus. But how can one signing, how can one player, how can one financial package cause this much chaos financially at Juventus? Now don't get me wrong, the Cristiano Ronaldo signing generated Juventus a lot of money. We're talking 520 Cristiano Ronaldo jerseys were sold in the first 24 hours. Yes, you heard me correctly. 520,000 jerseys were sold in the first 24 hours, generating a lot of money for Juventus. But over time, especially in the long run, the Cristiano Ronaldo financial package, it was too costly for Juventus, especially when you bear in mind just around the corner was the COVID-19 pandemic. Juventus' finances took a massive hit. Why? Because stadiums weren't open to the crowd anymore. Revenue generated from ticket selling, it was non-existent. Stadiums were closed. Teams were forced to play behind closed doors. Now, regardless of the Cristiano Ronaldo package and the restrictions that COVID-19 brought to Juventus, Juventus had to find a way to balance their books. And let's just say they didn't do it in the most ethical of manners. A few years later, a few tough accusations were thrown Juventus' way. Number one, inflating player transfer values. And number two, the most important one, hiding salary payments in order to balance their accounts. In 2022, UEFA conducted a formal investigation of the entire Juventus institution, investigating Juventus for potential breaches of club licensing and FFP regulations. Now, let's just say Juventus were found guilty, and boy, oh boy, those consequences were severe. They weren't light in the slightest. Those consequences would change Juventus' future. On top of a point deduction, Juventus were excluded from all European competitions, in particular the 2023-2024 European Conference League. Now, being excluded from European football, that's a massive financial dent in regards to your match revenue. Consequence number two, Juventus received a £20 million fine suspended, which means 10 million of it was issued now. But just know, the other 10 million, if you were to move out of line, that 10 million is coming your way. Juventus knew they needed to behave and operate correctly, sticking to PSR and FFP regulations, or else that £10 million fine was coming their direction. Now, as they say, when it rains, it pours. And boy, oh boy, did it pour over Juventus. In 2024, June 2024, Juventus reported a loss of just under £200 million, 199.2 to be precise. Now, that's a 22% increase from 2023's £124 million loss. Juventus, this massive institution, was in financial turmoil. What were the reasons behind it? Player wages, match tickets because of COVID-19, and on top of that, the exclusion from European football. Like, guys, you generate money just from securing a spot in those competitions, but the further you get on, the more money you earn. All of those financial packages were taken away from Juventus. Now, after the financial scandal, Juventus' entire board decided to resign out of embarrassment, out of humiliation. They felt like they'd caused enough trouble at Juventus. President Agnelli stepped down. Vice President Pavel Nedved also stepped down. In came Cristiano Giuntoli. Now, this is the reason why you guys even clicked on the video. He was appointed in 2023, and he was the man that was given the assignment of steadying the Juventus ship, implementing a sustainable financial model. Let's not forget, Cristiano Giuntoli, he was the man who built the iconic Napoli winning Scudetto team. Now, the $1 million question was, What is Cristiano Giuntoli's role at Juventus? Number one, it was to oversee club operations. Number two, player transfers, scouting, and the overall squad management. The aim was to stabilize the club's finances and rebuild the team to a competitive level. Now, Cristiano Giuntoli's long-term priority at Juventus was financial sustainability, but this is where the criticism has come. This is where disappointment has come to some Juventus fans, because all of this came at a cost. Sometimes for a club to generate quick cash, they need to cash in on some of their most prized of assets. They need to cash in on some of their young players of sky-high potential. Juventus's next gen stars were being sold. Integral players of Juventus were also being sold in order to generate quick revenue. So because of that, Juventus underwent a massive summer rebuild. And I'm not even joking with you guys. Outwent Federico Chiesa to Liverpool, Moise Kean to Fiorentina, a double deal of Inning Jr. and Barrenechea to Aston Villa, Sule, a player of such high promise, a player that so many fans wanted to see in a Juventus shirt, went to Roma, and the one that hurts the most, Dean Huijsen, went to Bournemouth for as little as £15 million. I feel like the last two, Huijsen and Sule, players that have come through the ranks, through the Juventus Academy, next gen Juventus, they were players of sky high potential, and they were sold for a combined just under £50 million. And that takes us to the final talking point. Cristiano Giuntoli. Is he living up to expectations or not? Why are some Juventus fans happy with his performances, and why are some very, very, very disappointed and very hurt, if not angry? And I feel like the main reason is poor squad building. I look at it like this. Some of the players that Giuntoli has played a hand in signing, the majority of Juventus' summer recruits have failed to live up to expectations. We're talking Coop Miners from Atalanta, just under £60 million, and he doesn't look a quarter of the player that we saw under Gasperini. Douglas Luiz doesn't even look 1/8 of the player that we saw under Unai Emery at Aston Villa in the Premier League. Nico Gonzalez, a player from the Serie A, from Fiorentina, £40 million. He's also struggled to live up to expectations. And the question always is, do these players even suit Thiago Motta's total football approach, the system that he's looking to implement? But seeing as we're now touching on Thiago Motta, I look at it like this. When you appoint a manager, in my opinion, a project manager like Thiago Motta, that wants to revamp Juventus, that wants to bring a style of football that Juventus fans have never seen at Juventus, what a manager needs more than anything is trust, time. But in order to help him through those tough periods, why not sign him players that are most familiar with his system? How many times in the past have you seen when managers get hired at new clubs, their first signings are players that they worked with at their previous clubs? These are players that understand their system. They understand the manager's demands and expectations. I feel like in the summer, Juventus targeted players like Joshua Zirkzee, but they fell short. They couldn't agree a deal with Bologna. Manchester United secured his services. The one that I feel like hurts Juventus fans the most is Riccardo Calafiori. Riccardo Calafiori was one of the most integral pieces to Thiago Motta at Bologna. His versatility at the back, his tactical acumen, his ability to push forwards into midfield. He is one of the most, if not the most talented Italian players of the modern game. And he's a player that so many Juventus fans looked at and told themselves, this is a future captain. He was Juventus' primary target in a centre-half's position. Juventus couldn't secure his services. Option number 2 was Todibo. Juventus couldn't secure Todibo. He went to West Ham. Option number 3 was the panic buy. Time was running out. 15 million on an injury-prone Kalulu. Now, of course, looking back, Kalulu has been amazing. In my opinion, probably the signing of the season. But I feel like it still leaves a bitter taste in many Juventus fans, because they're looking at it and thinking, you couldn't secure the primary targets. You overpaid for some players, and there's been a lack of direction. There's been a lack of efficient squad building. Because when you look at the Juventus squad now, injuries to some key players and they look weak. There isn't many areas where they can rotate. They're being forced to play players out of position just in order to field a competitive starting 11. But this is a Juventus team under Giuntoli that spent £175 million in the summer. Now that's where the criticism comes. If you were to look at some of their January business, Ronaldo Vega was a player that was signed by Chelsea for £12 million. But Juventus have just now gone and paid £4 million for a dry loan of 6 months with no obligation to buy. They've gone and paid Chelsea 1/3 of the overall transfer fee that they paid for a 6-month loan. Juventus fans look at it and tell themselves, money is being spent, but is it being spent on the right players in the right areas? That's where the criticism comes. And I look at it and tell myself, these drastic changes were necessary in order to keep Juventus afloat, in order to comply with PSR and FFP. But I feel like it's the lack of squad building under Giuntoli that's really hindered Thiago Motta and the overall project. Now, if you've enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you guys on another one.